anyone that's focused on their own personal development, what ultimately is the motivation to become better and show up more powerfully in the world? It's actually so you can leave a lasting impact in the lives of those that you serve, also called leadership. How you show up as a father brings out the best in your kids. How you show up as a man brings out the best in your spouse, your coworkers, all those around you. You don't have to be in a position of authority to bring out the best in people. Shawn, dude, it's been good, man. And different digs. Where you at? Where you at?
I'm in Vegas right now, just for a work thing for a couple of days. So excellent. All over the place. Hectic, crazy summer, which if you have kids, I think is the case no matter what.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. I was just thinking about that yesterday. I went backpacking with my kids over the weekend, and on the way back, I was like, you know what I mean? Like you do something hard like that, and it's a good assessment tool as a parent to kind of see where your kids are mentally. My oldest daughter's just trucking, not complaining, pushing hard, doing great. My second daughter, are we there yet? Are we there yet? I'm so tired. Why are we doing this? Right. So I'm like, all right. Duly noted, mental fortitude, not there. Okay. And so, and the little guy, the 5-year-old did better than she did, but he was, he had a hard time getting frustrated with himself. And so it was a weekend of reassessment of what I need to be doing as a parent, certainly during summer, because that structure goes away. And we've been talking about this on the Iron Council, right? The importance of structure. And summer shows up, and one of the primary structures our kids have are schooling, whether at home or within the public school system. You take that structure away, and it's all of a sudden it's like free for all time. And I'm like, no, that's not going to work. I need to double down and get some structure going. And so that resonated actually. Once you said like summer, I was like, oh yeah, I need to work on some structure with my kids for sure. I'm assuming that's a little bit of the chaos, but summer for you is kids, but also busy for business as well, I assume.
Yeah. And trips. I mean, part of our structure is traditions, and part of the traditions that we have for summer is always camping, always like a vacation trip, always, little things. We make a bucket list, checklist for the summer at the beginning of the summer. And then we basically try and check the boxes. It could be as simple as like, go get acai bowls is one of the ones, right? It's just like funny little things that the kids want to do sometime through the summer, as heavy as like we're going to Italy next week, right? So it's like a wide range, and just making sure that we check those things off. That helps us with some structure. But
that's awesome.
I was just having this conversation with a group of guys the other day, and I think the most important thing as fathers is that we make sure we're doing things no matter what those things are. And I think what you said was perfect. Going on a hike or whatever it is, and especially when you have multiple kids, no matter what you do, you're creating experiences, you're creating memories, you're finding out, like you said, about your kids, which is the fun thing, right? About when you have multiple kids, it doesn't matter the circumstance and how great it is. One of them's not going to like it. One of them's going to love it. One of them's going to be kind of in between, and, good and bad circumstances. Oh. And, I mean, it's how humans are. Right. So
and how often as fathers, and I'm projecting a little bit, but I'm assuming a lot of guys listening can relate to me here, is how often I lack intentionality in creating those experiences because the timing's not right.
Yeah. Timing's never right.
It's never right. And I still struggle. I know that, right? I logically know the timing's not always going to be right. But yet I still wait for the ideal weekend. I still wait for things to align to think that I need to go do it. And it's like, no, just got to go. Right. And that's actually how this backpacking trip was this weekend. It wasn't good timing. But I thought, you know what? I've literally been wanting to take them up this particular mountain for like 8 years. Seriously, how pathetic is
Wow.
that? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I'm like, dude, and literally because in the Iron Council last month, was it, we talked about, and this is the power of accountability. We talked about the importance of getting outside within the Iron Council. And in that conversation, I made the commitment to the guys in the IC that I was going to do this trip of in my backyard in the foothills of where I live that I've always been planning to do, that I pushed off, and I was going to make the commitment to doing it. Well, the power of accountability. I was like, well, I got to do it. Right. And that's how that ended up happening. So anyhow, on the subject, Iron Council is open for enrollment. For you guys that don't know, it's only open at the beginning of each quarter. And so the enrollment of the Iron Council will close at the beginning of July. So if you're interested of banding with other men, being held accountable, being assigned on teams, and working through the systems and processes that we have to level up in our personal lives, join us. That's orderofman.com/Iron Council. We're doing a preview call as well this week. You can follow Mickler at Ryan Mickler on Instagram to get the details of those calls, or even follow us, and we'll be resharing that as well. So you guys are aware, and it's kind of like a preview night where we'll talk about some of the systems and things that we do in the Iron Council. Really effective way to kind of get an insight of what we do. But I really even think if you listen to this podcast, you have an idea of kind of what the Iron Council is, right? I mean, it's in line with the conversations that we have. So with that said, Shawn's filling in obviously for Mickler this week. We're going to jump into questions primarily from Instagram, and then, but we're going to do some headlines. So Shawn, you're up first, man. What's your headline?
All right. My headline is the debates this Thursday.
Are they this Thursday? I've been disconnected
yes.
a little bit. So this Thursday Biden's
night,
going to go against Trump.
Yeah. Yeah, which is going to be interesting to say the least. And this one's I call it fun topic, but for me, it's not fun because every part of this election coming in, I've been giving the analogy of like, this is like the sequel of a bad movie we didn't like the first time. It's going to be so terrible. I think no matter what, and by the way, like, I'm going to get hit from both sides, right? I think it's a no-win with Biden. It's a no-win with Trump. Now, saying that, I loved Trump's policies. I like what he did when he was president. I think there was a lot of positive change, and we were better off for it. And I think the opposite with Biden. And I could be attacked either way for saying that. But I think both of them are a no-win for the country. And the reason I say that is because as good as Trump's policies are, if you have half of the country that hates his guts, it just creates more of a divide, no matter how good his policies are, no matter how good he does with the economy, with the border, with any topic we can pick. And then Biden is Biden, right? I mean, he's just a shell of a guy. I mean, the best we have to offer literally can't control his bowel movements at this point, right? Like, that's a bad sign for the next 4 years, regardless. And so I think what the debate set up is basically it's kind of a preface of the arguing that we're going to be seeing the next 4 years. So that's my thought on the debates, right? And what's going to happen. I think it's going to be a slaughter fest as far as Trump goes. I think Biden doesn't stand a chance unless I don't know what the chemical mix is going to be that they're going to pump Biden full of before it happens. But I think for him to stand any chance, that's what they're going to have to do. And, like I said, it's going to be interesting more than any other thing. I don't know how the what do they call them? The people like making sure that it goes, the moderators. Like, I have no idea how they're going to try and keep it under control. It's insane,
So here's
Oh, so
my
that's my
okay.
thought on the debates, right or wrong or whatever. I think the debates are just setting us up. Forget about the election, who's going to win, any of that. I think it's just a preface of the arguing we're going to see the next 4
Yeah.
years.
And I think that
Either side.
you use the correct term, arguing. See, here's the part, like Trump will, I agree. I think Trump will like come across on paper of winning the debate, but winning how? Through logic, through critical thinking? No. Through attacking, through name calling, through you know, all the poor argumental fallacies that we shouldn't fall into when we're doing a debate. Like literally, if you really think about it, this is the part that I hate about this scenario is these debates are embarrassing. They're embarrassing because they're not found in logic. It's clown show for the populace that's actually quite stupid. Like you tell me a critical, you tell me a critical debate to argue over and you can address it in a soundbite. Really? There is no such thing. And anybody that thinks that you can win a debate in a sentence over a critical, important issue is naive. And that's the part of this that I just hate. Because what we'll end up getting is bulldozing Trump, name calling, Biden, sticking to his sound bites. No one's using logic. No one's being elevated through the conversation. No one's using critical thinking to address the issue. And now it's just a show, right? And this is where, like, when I hear Rogan go, dude, give me Biden and Trump, long format, 2 hours podcast. Now you're going to get to know people's opinions about things in a long format like that. And people may go, oh, it's not entertaining. Yeah, well, guess what? It shouldn't be entertaining. These are critical issues.
It's important. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
man.
What do you think the over under is on whether they're actually going to answer the questions being asked too?
No, yeah, exactly. They're going to hear question A, and then they're going to use, well, my soundbite statement that I've been prepping is over here, so I'm just going to use that, right? It's going to be pathetic, I'm sure.
It's going to be a mess,
So
but it'll be interesting to see what the turnout is, right? And what the viewership is going to be. I think that'll be a big indicator as well as kind of what the election is going to be. If there's a giant turnout for viewership, or
it kind of gets
no one's going to pay attention because they already don't care.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Shawn. It's like it sets a tone for like how involved is the populace, right? Yeah,
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or if they've already made their decision.
Yeah. Well, this is great. So my headline, I went with not a typical headline. I do that from time to time, and I went with a quote. And I love that I chose this quote because it resonated to me last week, and it's perfectly in line with what you're just talking about. And the quote is, and actually it's not a quote. I think it's like a statement that I've read and then I rewrote it. And so maybe someone said it and I'm not giving them credit. A bad leader can destroy a great team, causing the best employees to flee and the rest to lose their commitment and motivation. A bad leader can destroy a great team, causing the best employees to flee and the rest to lose their commitment and motivation. And where this resonated, and hopefully this resonates to everybody, that we can see this connection. What's a leader? And I had this interesting conversation with someone actually a couple weeks ago, and we're talking about personal coaching and leadership development. And my response was, leadership development is personal coaching. They're actually one and the same, because anyone that's focused on their own personal development, what ultimately is the motivation to become better and show up more powerfully in the world? It's actually so you can leave a lasting impact in the lives of those that you serve, also called leadership. And so when we look at how to show up more powerfully as a leader, that is part of showing up more powerfully, period, even as individuals. And so this quote resonated with me primarily from the perspective of it matters. It matters how Biden shows up. It matters how Trump shows up. And how they show up brings out the best in people. How you show up as a father brings out the best in your kids. How you show up as a man brings out the best in your spouse, your coworkers, all those around you. You don't have to be in a position of authority to bring out the best in people. And the flip side is still true. When we don't show up as great leaders, we will lose the commitment and the motivation of those people around us. And they will silently quit. We will unmotivate them, demotivate them, and we will lose commitment from them. So critical. A bad leader can destroy a great team. The best employees will flee when we're bad leaders, and the rest will end up silently quitting. So there's my headline for today. All right. So I'll go ahead and read off the questions. Shawn, you get first stab at them. So this is from Alex. I actually didn't write down Alex's Instagram handle, so my apologies, Alex. So good afternoon. I listen to the Order Man podcast with Ryan and yourself. He's obviously talking about me every week and really appreciate the content you guys put out. I'm reaching out because I am seeking more advice. At work, I like to think that I'm very friendly and I enjoy talking to everyone just to say hello, ask about their week or weekends, how they are doing, and basic questions like such. Nothing too personal, but enough to get to know people. I have a good friendship with almost all of my coworkers because of this. However, someone seems to have misunderstood or mistaken this as me flirting with them and has complained about it to a management. This person has never expressed to me that me talking to them has made them feel that way. In fact, the only way I found out about this was when my manager pulled me into the office to confront me and tell me this person feels that I am overbearing and I like to talk too much. I'm unsure how to feel or handle this situation.
Well, this is, my initial gut reaction is that there's a lot more of this than there used to be. And so we're kind of in a different world now when it comes to interacting with our coworkers. I couldn't even imagine being in HR in this era of business right now, especially the larger scale company that you have, because so many things are misconstrued as inappropriate nowadays. And so I think for you, what I'm hearing is that he's an outgoing person. And I personally don't have this challenge because I'm more of an introvert. And I, tend to only talk to people if I'm addressed by them most of the time. But if you're an outgoing person, I think what you have to do, and it's not going to be natural for you, is just reel it back in a little bit when it comes to your interaction with your fellow employees. Because if one person is saying that, then you also have to think, okay, that's just the one who's saying something about it. Okay. So I can't, without knowing this guy, I can't say that it's not him, that he's just friendly. It's some people think they're just friendly, but they say inappropriate things sometimes because their version of friendly or the way that they were brought up, they think everybody is kind of lived that way. And so the thing's not offensive to them or, no big deal to them could be misconstrued to somebody else. I can just think of like my family, for instance, when we get together on my mom's side of the family, it's everybody, when they walk in the door, kind of the greeting is, "What's up, dumbass?" And it's like, everybody thinks it's funny. They spend the whole time berating each other. It's like, no one can do anything right. It's, it's just like, you just get the worst of everybody and everyone thinks it's hilarious. And so when I was younger, I used to think everybody interacted that way. And I found out fairly quickly, like, you can't address most people certain ways. And so, you have to figure that out. Now, in that, I would also talk to your manager and ask, like, really, with full transparency, is it me? Am I overbearing? Do you think I talk now? You're probably not going to want to hear the things that they tell you. And maybe if you have some closer friends, that job, you can ask them, like, hey, what do you guys think? I wouldn't mention who's complaining about you,
Yeah, don't
but I say, hey,
collude.
what do you guys
Yeah.
think? Yeah, definitely don't do that because that's just going to make things worse. But hey, what do you guys think? Do you think I'm a little overbearing? Do you think I talk too much? Do you think I need to kind of stick to task a little more? What's your advice for me to be more effective in the workplace? And maybe that, right? I mean, again, there's so much context that we don't have in this with human nature. It's kind of like sending a text message, and
Yeah.
the actual context, so much context is lost in texting or in typing than having an actual conversation. So I think the most important thing you could do is find the people that are closest to it, that you respect, that you think can look at it um, uh, without bias and be honest with their input and kind of navigate from there.
Totally.
What would you say or add to that?
I totally agree. I mean, Alex, the probability is you probably are talking too much.
Yeah.
That's the probability. And be careful not to be this is like, oh my gosh, everyone's out to get me. It may not be that, right? But I know like some of my best friends, like one of my best friends, and Matt, if you're listening, I love you, Matt. And I love Matt, but Matt's a talker, right? And because he's a talker, there's an impact to hanging out with Matt. The impact is I don't go to bed on time. We'll end up until 2 a.m. in the morning chatting. And I love him, but there's a price to it. Right. And so you got to rein it in. You got to check it. And it's mostly because you want people, how's this? You want people wanting to talk to you. That's the ideal state, not you talking to them. So talk to people enough that they want to be with you, but don't overdo it. Otherwise, they're not getting their work done. You're distracting them from getting something done or whatever. And so maybe even just sit with it and kind of watch body language a little bit, and you'll get reps with this. Like I know when people are no longer caring about my story, right? Oh, my next joke. You can tell. Like if you watch body language enough, you go, oh, they're bored with me, to be frank, or they're just appeasing me right now and pretending to be interested, but they're really not. Like you can get to a point where you can read people. The important part is don't take it personal as like they don't care about you or I'm not valuable or none of that kind of jazz. It's just we all have competing priorities. We have things that we're trying to get done, and there's a high probability you could be a distraction. And so maybe get a little bit more self-aware. And then I think on Dale Carnegie's book, what's his famous book? How to Influence People.
How to Win Friends and Influence People.
I'm pretty positive he talks about that concept of how to generate friendships, but be scarce with them. So they're seeking you out. You don't want to overdo it and become more of a burden and or a distraction. So just kind of play with those thoughts. Now, I can't help but demonize your boss really quick because this is the problem, by the way. So if anybody's in a leadership position, let's address this correctly. Okay. So here's what happened to Alex and how his boss handled this is HR 101. Yeah. This is management 101. This is what everyone does today. And this is the problem with most managers today. So now let's flip this on its head and let's address this how it should have been addressed. So all of a sudden, Sally comes to me and says, hey, boss, I want to talk to you about something. I think Alex is a little inappropriate and overbearing, and he talks too much. And I think it's because he's flirting with me. Right? And this is how his boss should have handled it. Really interesting. Is it in the space of sexual harassment? Because first, legally, you have to do that. So let's get to the regulation stuff. Is it sexual harassment? Is that what you're saying? And then she says, no, I just think it's overbearing and he's talking too much and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, awesome. Have you talked to Alex yet? Oh, no, I haven't talked to Alex. Okay, that's how we address it here. Because by me talking to Alex on your behalf, I'm going to create a mistrust in the relationship between you and Alex. And that is the last thing that we need to do. What we need to do is we need to practice assertive communication within this organization. If there's ever a time that you feel uneasy, if there's a time where an employee is not doing their job, where they're a distraction, if a project's failing, whatever there's a problem, we don't hope and wait. We don't run to leadership. What we do is we practice assertive communication and we raise our hand and we address the issue. So let's walk through, Sally, how you can have this conversation effectively with Alex so you're handling communication properly and your relationship is even stronger. And we do it in a way that we can coach Alex and help Alex. Because do we care about Alex? Yes, we do. So let's walk through and let's do some coaching on how you do that effectively. That is how that gets handled in an effective organization. You don't pander to people being offended. You don't pander, well, he's overbearing and I don't want to have the No, not here. You address it head on. That's how you grow, Sally. So in this example that Alex gave, who might grow? Alex does. But who didn't grow? The boss didn't grow, and neither did Sally. And they're also at fault in regards to how they're handling the circumstance. Because now look at what we're doing. What are we coaching Alex to do? We'll find someone, try to get some feedback. Why? Because the feedback's not getting clear. Why?
Yeah.
Because no one's communicating clearly and being honest. They're circumventing what they're perceiving as a difficult conversation. And that shit's got to stop. So if you're in leadership and management, handle these kind of things correctly. Don't pander to people. Don't rescue them from having a difficult conversation. You coach them in doing the difficult thing because that is where growth is. That's my spiel. Sorry, Alex, tough, man. But hopefully that helps. Anything you would else add, Shawn, or did we cover it, you think?
I think we covered it. It's back to the not taking it personally thing. We all have different personality types, and he's obviously the one that is more relationship driven, most likely. And so if he's a relational type of a person, talking to your personality type, for instance, yeah. I can tell, I don't even have to ask you, Kipp, that in your day to day, you look at him as what you would call a time waster. And you want to avoid time wasters like the plague, right?
Totally.
And
anyone that
doesn't
shoulder
say anything
taps
bad
me,
about him as a person.
No. Yeah. Anybody that shoulder taps me to start a conversation. Yes. I'm sorry, but I'm like, dude, I got work to do. Like, if you want to talk to me, it's, grab me after hours or schedule a damn meeting, right? Like, and I know that's harsh, but like, do you know what's going on in my world? Dude, you can't be talking to me. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it's tough, right? Because you want to be approachable and all those other things. So yeah, you're spot on. I would, Alex, you'd rub me wrong in the office a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And his personality type is only 30% of people. So that means 7 out of 10 that you're talking to all day long are having these thoughts like, dude, I got stuff to do. Right. So don't take it personal. Yeah. Just know that's how it is and act accordingly.
Yeah. Adjust. Good call. All right. Run the 515. Do you still, well, that's a question for Ryan. Next question. All right. Jay Burris 96. What are some questions I definitely need answers to from a woman before marrying her?
Ooh. I mean, what do you want is really the question. What do you want? Before you can ask questions of you're a partner, a future partner, what do you want? And most men don't know what they want, or they think they know what they want, and then they bitch about it when they get it. Like most men say, hey, I want a strong woman. I want a woman that's not dependent on me. I want a woman that can make her own buck, that can take care of herself, that
Yeah.
isn't needy, isn't right. And then when they get one of those, they're like, man, this chick's a bitch. Like
Yeah.
she just won't
She
stay off of me. She keeps me too accountable. Right. And so it's like,
braids me, is more masculine than I am, is not sexually attracted to me. Right. It's like, well, that's a problem. Yeah.
yeah. And then, or some men say, I want a woman who's more subservient to me. I want to be the provider. I want a woman that's going to support me, that will, at the end of the day, rub my shoulders and make me dinners and, do these things. And then when they get a woman like that, then they complain like, why is she so needy? Why does she, constantly need me to tell her what to do? Why isn't she proactive? Why isn't right? And it's like, again, really think about what you want and what comes with that. And then the questions aren't, you don't have to ask her if she is those things. You, through normal conversation, should be able to figure that out, and I would go for what do they want? I think start with knowing what you want and then ask them what they're looking for. I actually had this conversation with Ryan last September when I was out in Utah and I was hunting and we were walking around and I was, just checking in on him, asking him how, I hope he doesn't mind that I'm talking about this a little bit. And I was just asking him, how's it going, man? It's got to be weird dating, right? And like, what have you learned so far? And one of the things that he told me he learned is I've just learned, like, I know what I'm looking for. I know what I want. And so I've learned to kind of start these conversations with asking them what they want. And pretty quickly, I can find out if, if any pieces of those puzzles, that puzzle kind of fits together.
Dude, and I love that, Shawn, that I loved his answer in the sense of, by knowing what you want up front, you can get to brass tacks quicker. And I think that's important, because what will happen is, you might find the right personality, right? And you're attracted to her. She's great. And she's like, absolutely, kids are not on the table.
Mm.
And that might be a deal breaker for you. And if you waited to figure that out until later, that kind of sucks, man. Like I feel sorry for guys actually that want to be fathers and end up with a woman that doesn't want to have kids. Mm. That's a really big deal. Like, in my opinion, it's a massive big deal. That's a level of fulfillment and purpose and meaning in life that they will never have. And not to get on a soapbox, but our conversations that we have society around being parents is pathetic. In fact, I don't even like it anymore. I hate it. We don't want to have kids. I don't have kids. I have my dogs. Like, they're the same. They're not the same. And then our default mentality is when someone says, oh, Kipp, how many kids do you have? And I say 6. Holy crap. It's like, absolutely I do. Why? Because having children is amazing and it's a blessing. And if I had 2 more accidentally, I would embrace it and love it. Like, we need to have a positive relationship around having children, not this burden. No, they're not a burden. They're amazing. And so, that's a side tangent. Sorry. So, but my point being is, like, man, if that's really important, you got to know that stuff. And so I love that Ryan's going into these relationships up front, kind of addressing these kind of non-negotiables. And I think there's a little bit, Shawn, in seeking what you want. And then there's probably those non-negotiables, and you should probably get to those a lot faster than later on. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, for sure. And it's talked about on Ask Me Anything ad nauseum about, men trying to find the right woman, or they're waiting for the right woman to show up for them, when really what it is we need to show up as the man, that
deserves that kind of woman,
that kind of woman, that's going to attract that kind of woman. And when you're showing up that way, that radar is going to be up. And so you're going to find more of those women in the vicinity of how you're showing up. And then the conversations also end up, being a little more natural and and whatever else. So I know we're not directly answering, like we're not giving him the questions to ask, but I think it comes down to knowing what you want and then finding out what they want. That's your best starting point. And then from there, you can go into, some of the little details of, whatever, right? Everything's different nowadays. Like maybe you don't believe in sex before marriage. So that's probably an important question to ask. Maybe you believe people should live together before they get married. Like that's a, important thing to bring up early on there. I think you nailed it when you said that people get stuck in these relationships that are going to a place that they don't agree with, or they don't want, or they don't envision for their lives. And like, we all think, well, you could just walk away at any time, but as human nature is, once you're comfortable, it's hard to walk away from anything. So a lot of men get stuck in relationships that don't serve them or the person that they're with because they're comfortable.
Yeah.
So
you know what, Shawn?
Before you get comfortable, be willing to ask a little more uncomfortable questions earlier on.
Yeah. You said something I think is, and I know it's a little bit off topic, but I was thinking about this literally last week. You said something to the extent of being the man that deserves that kind of woman, right? And so we sit back and we're like, oh, where's this woman? I need to find this woman. Versus what you should be doing is like being that kind of man first, right? Because otherwise you're never going to attract that woman, or that's not going to be deserving of that kind of woman. And I was thinking, why do we do that? Why do men do that? And I was actually thinking on a similar subject this past week, as I had a lot kind of going through my mind, to be frank. And I think it's rooted in this idea of low self-confidence, where these men want someone that will loyally accept them for who they are. Because even us, think about it. There's a big difference, right, Shawn? Like if I said to you, Shawn, you gotta make sure to always stay on the path and be a great guy, because otherwise, you're undeserving of your wife, right? Like that might be true, but it's also kind of a little bit sad because part of me goes, well, where's the loyalty? Where's the accepting me for the dipshit moron that I am right now? Why do I have to constantly make sure that I'm worth loving? And in sight of that, like that thought process, I really came to the conclusion of why that mindset is rooted in what? Seeking validation from her, right? Being good enough for her, right? And then when you're not great, then it feels unfair that you have to prove yourself to be loved. And I think it only is that way because you don't love yourself. And it's in building confidence and self-love and being proud of where you are and not seeking that in a woman. If she wants to be with you, awesome. If she doesn't, you know what? So be it. But you got to believe that like what you're bringing to the table is great. Always. Otherwise, we get into this trap of the no more Mr. Nice Guy, constantly seeking validation. Oh, she's not doing this. It doesn't mean she doesn't love me, right? And that's a yucky place to be. And I actually think when we talk about guys like leveling up to prove to get a woman, what will happen is those guys that don't get the self-confidence and the self-love, right? If you want to use that term, I know it sounds kind of weird. I don't know a better term than that. But these guys that haven't learned to love themselves, what they'll do, Shawn, is they'll work hard. They'll bust their butt. They will show up powerfully, and then they'll let it go because now they got their woman, right? And they're not taking care of themselves. And they'll constantly be seeking validation from her. And I think that's a really dangerous place to go.
Well, that's that comfort I was talking about, right? I mean, you just nailed
part of it.
It's we start to let that stuff go because we become comfortable. It chases off. We don't have to work as hard because the hard work was in the chase. We tell ourselves, and that might not be exactly what we tell ourselves, but that's where we land.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, totally. I want to give Jay Barris 96 some solids though, right? Definitely need answers from a woman before marrying. And I don't know that the exact questions, but things that come to mind: aligned religious belief. That's critical, right? Like how you live your life and the basis of
Mm,
morality, you should probably be aligned. Politically, kind of matters, to be frank. And most people don't change their political viewpoints
mm,
statistically. So don't think, oh, I'm going to convince her to be a conservative one day, right? Like the probability of that's super low. Having children, I think, is another critical issue that you should probably be aware of. And and it sounds unfair, but I think it's important. There might be non-negotiables from a past perspective that you don't want to deal with. And by the way, it's not your job to deal with it. So get clear. Do you want to take on being married to someone that already has kids? That's not your responsibility. That's a choice. Do you want to make that choice? Do you care if she used to have a OnlyFans? Do you care if she still has one? How is she on social media? Is she getting dopamine hits and all this attention online? And she going to stop that? Like, let me say it this way. If you're making any assumptions around change after marriage, address those, because the probability is your assumptions are wrong and they're not going to change just because you got married. So anything you would add, like just generic items for him?
when you were saying that, I wrote down the word values. Everything you're stating is what your values
Values.
are, and then the
Yeah, good point.
questions around those things. And I think nailing all of the majors, which is your faith, your family, your finances, your business philosophies, your fitness and health is one, right? I mean, it's
Debt.
like you got to be in line with that. Yeah,
Yeah.
financial things, and even fun, what they like to do
Yeah.
for fun, and some of the things, and them understanding what you like to do for fun, and that like you want to be able to have the time to do those things. They're all values, what you're talking about. So figure out those core values and come up with questions surrounding the majors.
All right. Next question from Michael J. He said, since Father's Day was recent, my question is, where does this dad strength come from? The all seems very all men are they all seem very strong. Even I do not see them work out as much as the younger generation. And this is from Michael J. from Slovakia, by the way. So
Oh,
dad
wow.
strength, father strength. Is it a
You
thing?
know, it is a thing, for sure it is. And
Yeah, I think so too.
I definitely see this in jujitsu. I don't know if you've experienced this in
Yeah,
jujitsu a lot. I mean,
old man jiu-jitsu is what we call
yeah.
that.
And here's what I think it is. Honestly, I think it's experience. I think it's
Mm,
having a better understanding of the mechanics of your body as you age that helps you use your strength better instead of just muscling things. I mean, just think of like the basic thing of lifting with your legs, not your back. I
yeah,
mean, you
you'll
could
get
tell a
hurt.
20
We've
something year
learned how
old.
to get hurt. Yeah.
Exactly. We've done it wrong a bunch of times, and then if you incorporate using a trainer in any capacity and they teach you actually how to lift, how to use your body, just all of those fundamentals and those basics over time, you learn how to get the most strength out of the body that you have. And when you're younger, you haven't learned that yet. And for most of us, it's trial and error and doing it the wrong way to learn what works better and being strong with what we have. And so as you gain that experience, you become stronger.
Yeah, I totally agree, man. I never thought of it that way. What I assumed, which I think might still be true, there's a little bit of this, is I also think that as you get older and you get into fatherhood as well, you end up having to use strength at a level that you've never had to before. I'm trying to think of an example. Like, no joke, I have moved a piano downstairs once, And I remember thinking, if I don't hold this piano up correctly, this will crush me and maybe break my ribs or my leg or something.
Oh, wow.
Like I remember, like I've gotten myself in a predicament where I have to use all strength possible or something bad will happen. I think those reps show up as you get older, where there's these nuances of I'm having to hold a kid a certain way. I'm having to do something in a certain way because why? I kind of have to, right? Like I even experienced this last weekend. I was wrapping up my deck. I shouldn't, well, I quasi messed up on my deck, and I had to put in supports on the bottom of the deck after I had already laid the Trex. I was by myself. So you tell me, how does a man take a 2x10 that's 20 feet long and reinforce the bottom of the deck by yourself?
Leverage, science.
That's kind and that's kind of some of that old man weird strength stuff, right? Where I'm kind of like balancing a 2x10 on my shoulder, right? Pressing up while drilling into the side. You know what I mean? Like, why? Because I had to. I didn't have an option. I didn't have a body to help me do it. So what do? You find a way, right? And there's more opportunities of quote unquote finding a way as a father and as you get older. So maybe a combination of those two things is where old man strength comes from. I don't know.
Yeah. And sometimes it's reps and certain things. I mean, I just think of like growing up, I used to work for this company that would set up tents for movie locations. And every day I pounded stakes into the ground, these big, 2-foot metal stakes. And I would pound them with a sledgehammer into asphalt, into clay, into like, it didn't matter what it was or how hard it was. Every day was pounding stakes. And the few years that I worked in that job gave me this skill set that I've been able to carry into the rest of my life, to where now I'm creeping in on 50. And for my wife and I, when we go to carnivals, it's one of the fun things for us, both of us, we actually giggle about, is when they have one of those things at the carnival that you hit with the sledgehammer, right? Hits the bell.
Yeah.
And no one can ever hit the bell. I can hit the bell on those things every single time.
Yeah.
Like it's not even hard, but it's all technique, right? That technique, the understanding how to hit it, how to swing it, how to, put all of the strength into the point of contact. Doing it for those few years, I never lost. Yeah. Right. That muscle memory is still there. As soon as I pick up a sledgehammer, I can regain that muscle memory again. And so again, that experience, that sometimes it's reps for doing a certain thing for a certain amount of time. And that turns into old man strength.
Yeah, totally. Well, and I think it's like farmers are the same way, right? It's not that the farmer went to the gym and worked on his deadlift. It's no, he learned how to pick up hay bales in a way that you don't blow out your back. And you do that enough, and all of a sudden someone feels that and they go, whoa, you're strong. Well, am I stronger, or have I just learned how to use the proper leverage? Because otherwise I would have, blown out my back by throwing hay bales all day. So I think you're spot on, Shawn, from that perspective. All right, Mr. Stout 6, how to deal with anxiety and panic attacks.
You have to breathe. When I used to hear these questions, I never understood them because I'm not the type of person that ever really has had a ton of anxiety in my life. But I can tell you the last year, I've been in multiple situations just with things happening with our kids and, other stresses and things happening in our lives, that for the first time in my life, I've gotten these panic attacks, anxiety and some of these things. And so it's actually, this might sound weird, maybe I'm a masochist, but I've kind of embraced it. I don't want to say enjoyed it, because it hasn't been fun. It sucks. But at the same time, I finally have some empathy, I think, for
Mm,
people who go through this.
yeah.
And what I've found works for me, and you and I personality wise are opposite. I'm assuming you carry a lot more anxiety because of your personality type than
Yeah.
I have through my life. So you've got some better advice. But I can tell you in the short time that's happened to me, because my base personality is to not worry about things, the faster I can go to my faith, the easier it is on me. And the
Yeah.
shorter that those stints of anxiety last, but I have to consciously go to my faith in the long term. And 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 everything happens for a reason. That I have a heavenly Father that loves me, that knows me, that has a plan for me, and is going to put difficult things in my path. And that those things, even though they may suck now, they're leading towards a good place in our lives, making us stronger and better and more grateful and everything else. And so the faster I can get to that space of thinking long term and big picture, even though I may not see it now, but being in gratitude and faith for what that faith has given me so far, is, for me anyways, been the best thing that's helped me. Um, so that being said, I'm assuming you've dealt with it longer than I have. So what would you
Yeah.
say?
Why do I seem like a high strung kind of guy, Shawn? Is that what you're
It's just
saying?
that personality type, dude. It's like we said before. It's not, it's just, by the way, you and my wife are the exact same personality type. So
Oh,
I've a
that's
lot of
funny.
experience in how
With
you show
dealing
up.
with me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no, I think what you said is spot on, man. I was talking to my daughters, we camped on a Saturday night. We had to camp Saturday. We couldn't pull it off Friday to Saturday. And so knowing that, we couldn't get down off the mountain in time for church. And so we kind of had church up on the mountain. And
Which
I
is
asked my
cool.
kids, I said, girls, primarily talking to them because my son's only 5. I said, girls, why is the message of the gospel so valuable? Like, why is it important? And ultimately, what we concluded was because it's a message of hope.
Mm.
That's it. It doesn't matter how hard life gets, there's hope. There's hope for something better. There's hope or understanding in that the struggle is a process of learning and that I'm going to be better for it. And in all darkness and all trouble and anxiety and everything goes to shit, the idea of believing that you have a creator that knows you, that understands you. And if you're a Christian, that you have a savior that has experienced what you have experienced way more. And in doing so, you're not alone in your suffering, is a
Mm.
message of hope. And the idea of repentance is a message of what? Hope. That I can make mistakes, that I can be a horrible father, I could be a horrible person and choose to be different. And that how I was yesterday, how I was in the past can be forgotten. That is a message of hope. And that is, spot on. And so I agree with you. For me, connecting from a religious perspective is what got me through my divorce, to be frank. The idea, once you have children, the pressure's on. I can't feel sorry for myself. Why? Because I have people depending on me. That's why.
Mm.
And
Which
so
causes a lot of that anxiety, by the way.
I know that doesn't,
I've experienced
but
way more anxiety in that than any other thing in my life,
it
personally.
also helps you not give up.
Yeah.
And it prevented me from giving up, but I agree. It has increased hope, or it has increased probably anxiety and frustrations that I've had. So the only other things I would add is, one, I think we go to something is wrong way too often. And I think that generates even more anxiety. So if I'm really stressed out, well, it shouldn't be this way. Says who? Right? Like, it's like the guy that goes to the gym, right? The guy's at the gym and he's like, this sucks. Why? Well, because my muscles are sore and this is hard. Of course it is. That's why your muscles grow. So we need to stop also demonizing when things are hard. Guess what? It's life. I remember one of my older brothers once, it was early in my marriage, and I had an unhealthy relationship with how marriage was supposed to go, by the way. I never thought like you should argue or fight. And so the first time I got in a fight, I thought, oh my gosh, I married the wrong person. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I remember calling up my brother Dustin. I said, oh my gosh, like we got this fight. She's mad and blah, blah, blah. What did I do? Right. And he just started laughing. He's laughing. I was like, why is this so funny? He's like, welcome to marriage, Kipp. It's hard, but it's worth it. Stop making it wrong that it's hard. And I think that's part of the anxiety. Oh, it shouldn't be this way.
Great
Says
point.
who?
Yeah.
It's hard, guys. Hard conversations happen. Oh, I'm not motivated. Guess what? Maybe you're not supposed to be motivated. Maybe you're supposed to figure out how to do this and not want to do it. Maybe that conversation with that guy that talks too much at the office is supposed to be a hard conversation because that's where growth is. We need to stop thinking everything should be comfortable and easy. And so that's one, is stop making it wrong that it's hard and difficult to do. I spot on with you. Eternal perspective, religion. This is a huge play. And then the third is, and I shared this on my Instagram last week. Full disclosure, dude, I was feeling super lonely. Like, I don't know. I was just in a weird state and I was just like, felt very alone. And I was going, I saw, or I read something. No, I watched something around Jordan Peterson. And he said, you can predict if someone has depression or other like mental disorder based upon how often they think and write and talk about themselves. And I was
How
like,
so?
because people that are highly depressed, what are they thinking about? Themselves all the time. And here I had this week of feeling highly lonely.
Their woes.
Who was I thinking about all week when I was feeling super hyper lonely? Who? My kids? My spouse? My friends? No. I was thinking about me the whole time. Oh, woe was me. Man, I feel so alone. Maybe, just maybe, we shouldn't be worried about ourselves too much. Just maybe the focus should be not my anxieties or my stuff, but actually about a little bit more about other people. And maybe it's an empathy that is another way that we deal with our anxiety and our panic attacks, is through the empathy and thinking of other individuals first.
You know, when you talk about feeling alone, I think that's another mistake people make, is we don't get help, especially men. Men are the worst.
Yeah.
We don't get help because then we're kind of taught, like, just suck it up, pull up your bootstraps, take care of it, be a man. Right. And so when you were talking, my thought was, neither one of us has mentioned therapy or counseling, but
totally.
I think when people hear the words therapy and counseling, most men automatically go to, no, I'm not messed up. I'm not going to do that.
I'm not broken. Yeah.
Yeah. So instead of saying that, as you were speaking, what it made me think was, we need a coach. So call it therapy, call it counseling, whatever you can. Maybe men need to start calling therapy mental coaching. Let's just get a coach, get a help. And by the way, you could be coached by friends. You could be coached by, your circle of influence, by people you respect, by people that have what you want, and ask them. But I think in that also, don't just go to your friends. And just like if you wanted to learn baseball or get better at baseball from your friends and you have a shitty swing, you don't want the friends that are going to be like, oh no, your swing's good, just keep swinging a bunch more and you'll get better. You want them to actually coach you, So don't just talk to your friends that you can dump the stuff on. Find somebody that can coach you, that can help you, that can counsel you. And I mean, sometimes I think we just need someone to talk to so we don't feel alone, right? And seek that out.
Yeah, I love it, man. Good call. Yeah, like a pivotal element of this conversation, we kind of overlook the whole coaching or the therapy side. And that's, be honest with you, I use this language a lot, and maybe it rubs people wrong, but I like it for a reason. And that is like, most of us are kind of broken. And I love that.
Kinda.
Yeah, well,
I think more than kinda.
But that's what I like about it, because now we normalize, hey, guess what? We're all a little crazy. We're all a little broken in a way, and it's okay. And it's not like, oh, people have their crap together. Trust me, they don't have their crap together. Most people don't. Most people are not even aware that they're broken. So the fact that you're even on a path of like, hey man, how do I deal with this, puts you ahead of most individuals. Most individuals are like, oh, well, the way I feel is because of my spouse, and they're not even taking ownership of their feelings. So at least you're in that space. But most people are kind of screwed up. And I like that normalization of it, because then it's not like something's wrong with me. It's like something's wrong with all of us.
Yeah.
Makes it a little bit more common conversation.
But say it in a different tone. Something's wrong with me. Like, just accept that. And it's our job to figure out how to lessen the blows with our shortcomings.
Yeah, I love that. All right, Rhodes Chill. How can I, as a teenager, love it, by the way, and my apologies for cursing as much as I do. You probably swear more than me as a teenager, but regardless, Rhodes Chill. How can I, as a teenager, nurture myself as a man, because I have no one else to do that for me? Nurture myself as a man.
Don't nurture yourself too much. You'll go blind. That's what grandma always told me. So
I just love that you couldn't stop myself. You're nurtured. Honey, what are you doing? I'm nurturing myself. Oh shit. That's funny.
So I can say, growing up without, now I'll preface this with, I love my dad. He's a great dad. But he just, as a kid, wasn't around much. That was circumstantial. My mom got custody. He got me every other weekend, maybe, and great guy, great example. But he was a great example in his second marriage, and how, with my brothers, he had 3 boys, and the way he fathered them and was around for them was awesome. But I never directly had that. And so what I had to do was find those men in whatever my circle of influence was that I wanted to be more like, and put myself in a position where I could be around them more often, to gain that wisdom, that help, that knowledge, that coaching we were talking about. And then in pursuit of that, in the meantime, you need to fill yourself with better information. So find books on masculinity, on manhood, on, there's a ton. Like Ryan's book is a great place to start, right? Sovereignty, I think I think I've given out almost 150 of Ryan's books in the last 4 or 5 years, right? To men who ask this exact question, like, where can I go to find, just a path to run on for showing up as a man? Like, hey, there's a book called Sovereignty. I'll send you one. What's your address? And do that. So read better books on those subjects, which, and then if you're not in the IC, get in the IC. Even as a teenager, awesome. Getting in and being in these conversations, or the earlier in your life, the better. And it's just think, Kipp, how many of the younger guys in the IC come in that you've thought to yourself, like, man, I wish I had this sort of circle of influence when I was that age.
Yeah, totally. Or even had the mindset that they're having, that this is important, right?
Yeah.
Like, to the fact that you're saying, dude, how do I nurture myself as a man when you're a teenager?
Giant, you're ahead of the
Dude,
curve.
Shawn and I both wish that we were thinking that way when we were teenagers,
so
right?
crazy.
So it's spot on, man. Spot on. Yeah, you're in a good spot. I agree. I mean, look up good resources. There's plenty of books. And the flip side of that is don't just go along, because what you're going to get by default is not going to help you. And you probably already know that, but I just want to make sure, right? Like, you got to go out of your way. You have to be intentional. And if you want to show up as a powerful man, you got to figure that out. You can't go, well, I'm just going to be, mediocre, or I'm just going to go along to get along, and I'll get that through school and my mom. Your mom will never teach you how to be a man. She never will. And in fact, and I know this sounds harsh, and maybe I'll get some slack or some criticism for this, but she can't. And if
No.
she attempts to, she will do it wrong, and you'll have an unhealthy relationship with what it means to be a man. So you got to figure it out. And it's unfortunate, right, that you don't have that man in your life to be able to do that for you. But trust me, there are men that are more than willing to speak into you to help you, because we're looking for that opportunity as well. And so, whether it's in the Iron Council, these men that have written amazing books on this subject, they wrote them for a reason, because this is important to them. And so seek that knowledge out, seek those individuals out, and surround yourself with these kind of men, because I think it's spot on. And I love the fact that you're thinking about it, man. You're on the right path. It's awesome.
Yeah, there's not many teens out there in that mind space, for sure. And I was about to say right now that I don't think ever, because most teenagers aren't thinking about their futures in that way. And so kudos to you for being ahead of the curve.
Yep, absolutely. All right, Izes Dehazi, 99% we are talking to ourselves. How do you talk to yourself?
I am a weirdo this way. I'm constantly telling myself I'm awesome, that I deserve this, that I'm a hard worker, that I kick ass, that I mean, and again, that's just years and years of affirmations. But I'm a big fan of affirmations and talking things into existence. And you nailed it earlier, Kipp, when you talked about self-love. It's most men degrade themselves, and we allow, like, we would never let people talk to us the way that we talk to ourselves. And so, like, I do it all the time. I'll do something and I'm like,
punched.
dude, what a dumbass. Like, like, I'm like, you are such a, like, what's wrong with you? That, but then I'll catch myself and be like, that was stupid, but it was also just a mistake. You're awesome. Your values, what you stand for, that was a mistake, and you also know how to fix it. So let's do that. Right. Let's spend more time in what I can do about it and less time about, I screwed up. And so my self-talk for the most part is super positive. And by the way, I do the same if I'm getting criticized by somebody else, or they're saying something critical, or something critical comes up, or I read something and all that stuff. My default has become, well, they're wrong. Not that I'm not going to take it to see if they might be right. But, if for instance, if somebody ever said I was lazy, well, I know that's not true.
You wouldn't even consider it. Yeah. You'd be like, whatever.
I know that's not true. Now, do I also like to have fun and mess around and whatever? Yeah, absolutely. But I know how to do both. And so again, it's one of those things that it's not all or nothing when it comes to who we are and how we show up. But you're not going to improve, and your self-talk isn't going to improve until you start with, it's kind of what we mentioned early on, knowing what you want. If you want to attract the right woman into your life, well, if you want to attract the right self-talk, you have to start figuring out what your values are, who you want to be, how you want to show up, and then how you expect to show up. And then you got to write it down, and you need to speak it every day. And that will naturally, the more you speak it, you're going to have to show up like that, because if you don't believe it, you're not going to be willing to speak it every day, or if you don't believe that you can do it, or that you can change, or that you can improve in those things. And so, know what it is that you want for yourself, how you want to show up, write it down, and start speaking it into happening. And the more you speak it, the more it's going to be at the forefront of your mind, so that consciously and subconsciously you will move towards the actions necessary to actually be and show up as the man that you want.
I like it, Shawn. A thought that crossed my mind while listening to you. Regret never comes not from failing. Most regret comes from not giving a full effort. Regret comes from when we give up. It's amazing that you could do something, but if you give it your all, you won't have regret around it. Because like, there's nothing I left on the table. And now you can be with yourself a lot better. You can deal with yourself a lot better when you're in a space of integrity. And that's really what we're talking about here as well. 95% of the talking, if it's negative about yourself, you also kind of have to ask yourself, are you out of integrity? And if you are, well, and this is kind of a twofold thing, right? Like, we don't want to beat ourselves up verbally, right? Or mentally, and that's not going to help you show up more powerfully. But also, if you're not showing up very powerfully, but I'll just go positive affirmation up the wazoo. But you know what? I'll do a half day's work. I won't do this. I'll compromise here. I'll lack discipline. I'll make promises to myself and not keep them. And you don't show up powerfully. You don't think you're going to be calling BS on your self-affirmation talks? Of course you are, because they're a lie. Right? So it's both, right? We got to show up powerfully. And we all know, you don't even need to ask us that question. Well, what is showing up powerfully? Listen to your stomach. Listen to your heart. Are you doing what you know you should be doing in the way it should be done? And it's amazing. Pick one day. Choose one day to show up powerfully, and you can't tell me at the end of the day you don't feel great about how that day went. In most cases, you'd be like, I gave it my all. Was it success or failure? It almost doesn't matter. What matters is I gave it a good run. I did my best, right? Now, it helps to also be having good self-talk at the same time. So I don't want to say it's a false, there's not a dichotomy here. It's a false dichotomy. You need to do both. It's not one or the other. And so make sure you're showing it powerfully. And if you're not, well, then start. That certainly helps the self-talk conversation, right? When you do what you know you should be doing.
I wrote this down, Kipp, as you were saying it, that justification kills our joy. Right? And I think that gets us more than any other thing is the justification of, and I had this thought as you were saying it. I'm sitting here in this hotel room in Las Vegas on this little couch, right? And as you said it, I just thought of this week. I mentioned there's been a lot of really difficult things. I haven't been sleeping. I've had anxiety, and I'm like not getting rest. I'm feeling crappy physically because of it. Bags under my eyes, all this stuff. And as you were talking, and you were talking about those justifications, it just instantly I connected to this week for me. And this week, I had that happen to me a bunch of times, or last week, because we're recording on a Monday now. So last week, I'm not sleeping, haven't been. I've had been sick physically because of it. And And jujitsu comes up. I go to jujitsu in the morning, 6:30 or 7 in the morning, depending on the day, 3-4 times a week, right? Currently. And so I haven't slept in like weeks. And so I'm up in the morning, my alarm set automatically to go to jujitsu. And my brain tells me you need more sleep, dude. Yeah. Like, just go back to, don't go. Right. It's fine. You need it. But I also know without that physical wake up of my body and going in and getting my ass kicked a little bit, like my body needs that. As tired as I am, it's going to make me stronger. I need all of it. I need the dopamine. I need that. Like, I just need all of the physical things that are going to help me mentally. And less sleep isn't going to help me. Like, I know that about myself. So as much as I didn't want to do it, I go in and I feel better that day because I didn't cave into the justification. And then the next day, the exact same thing happened. I did again. And then I ended up going 3 days in a row. And I'll tell you what, because of those 3 days of not accepting that justification and feeling like $1,000,000 when I was done, because I showed up the way that I tell myself I do, gave me more energy. Like, I'm sitting here in this stupid little couch seat in a hotel room, feeling stronger right now because of not caving to that justification last week. Yep. Compared to if I would have, at the same time, I can remember weeks where I did cave and I justified and I got the extra sleep. And by the way, I felt way worse with the extra sleep than I did by caving. Right. And so don't allow yourself to kill that strength, that joy, all the positive things that it brings you by justifying.
And those are those small battles, right, that we talk about. They're everywhere. They're
every
all day
day
long. Well, are you going to eat that Snickers? Are you going to do that ice cream? Are you going to hit the gym, right? Like, are you going to have that hard conversation that you've been avoiding? Or are you just going to wait and hope that someone else is dealing with it? Like, these are all those areas and these battles that make the difference of having a fulfilled life and not easy, a fulfilled life, right?
Yeah.
Man,
if we're talking self-talk, I think one of the things that I put into play a long time ago and how I myself is that I do hard things first and I'm used to do hard things. It's one of my affirmations that I put in place a long time. And what it did is it didn't allow me anything. What it does is when uncomfortable situations arise in my life, my default is discomfort equals winning to me in my life, right? Discomfort equals joy. And so if you could attach it that way, if we're talking self-talk, that's important also.
Yeah. And we need to, and back to what I was saying earlier, the more we normalize that, the better, because otherwise you have this false expectation of the way it should be. And you're going to be running around saying you've been robbed. And it's like, guess what? You're not getting robbed. This is the path. So we need to normalize the challenges in life, that they're part of growth. And that's not something that is quote unquote wrong, All right. Last question. So 406 Moto, with today's labor market, is it worth trying to scale an automotive service type business?
In any economic market, it's worth trying to scale any business. So that was sorry to pick on you, but I think it's a poor way to word the question. It's always worth it.
Always worth it.
Always worth it. Now,
the question is how? Yeah,
exactly. How to minimize our learning lessons along the way, I think, is what you're asking, right? Or is timing always going to be right? You always spoke to it. You already spoke to it earlier, Kipp. I mean, even in planning vacations, like the timing's never right. Right. So if you're talking about scaling the business, there is no perfect timing. Now, is there some luck involved with economy and timing and all of that? Like
things you can't control, by the way.
I mean, you're always going to have that no matter what. And so the answer is absolutely it's worth scaling. Actually, I take that back because it's not an absolute. It's never absolutely always, because I think of growing up as my dad and my stepdad were contractors. And to scale in those businesses, you take on more liability, more workers' comp, more outgoing, money and salaries. You have to, your
Stakes go up.
inflow of new jobs the stakes go up,
Yeah.
the stress, everything. And so if that's not what you want, remember talking about what we want in our lives? If that's not what you want, right, then no, it's not worth it. Then don't scale. But if that's what you want, then yeah, it's worth it. Okay. And now it's up to you to figure out, how do I minimize the other factors? Which, if no matter what your business, there's always somebody that needs what you do. So you have to find how to get to those people the most effectively. And so that's going to be up to you. I can't give you that answer, but I think stop kind of meandering around in, is it worth it or not? Because that keeps you, if you're stuck there, 5 years is going to go by and you're going to do what Kipp talked about. Most of our regrets aren't from trying things. It's from never trying and wondering what would have been. And so it's know that it's worth it if that's what you want, and then figure out what it is. Now, if you're in an automotive service industry, find the most successful guys in that industry and see if they'll give you advice, give you tips. Now, if it's the guy down the street that you're competing against, you might not want to go talk to that guy, but certainly find some guys somewhere else in the country in a similar business that can help give you some tips.
Totally. Well, and maybe, and we talk about this sometimes, but like we get false summits, right? So you're going to try to make this decision on whether you should scale based upon your current knowledge. Well, guess what? You may not have all the knowledge to make that decision. And I think it's important that you realize that. And as you start taking action, all of a sudden, more knowledge shows up to help you make that decision. But what's required to get more knowledge? Action. You got to act on it. And so you may not know the right approach and you may not figure it out until you start working through it and addressing it, right? And your question's kind of geared around labor market. Well, how can you be disruptive with the labor market? Right? How do you build, I don't know, an intern strategy of new automotive service techs in a way that you're grabbing fresh guys right out of training? And now you're not dealing with the labor market. You're growing your labor market. You're building your labor market, right? Like, and I don't know the answer. I'm not going to pretend to understand your industry and I'm an expert in it, but trust me, be a disruptor in it. That way you're not competing with the labor market anymore. You found another way, or you're doing it better, or you're doing it another way that other automotive service companies aren't doing. So you're not in the same boat as them. I don't know. But man, if you take it on, you're going to get a false summit. You're going to go, oh, it's this way. And then you're going to learn. You're like, nope, not that. Oh, but this other idea opened up. And man, I can't count how many times I've heard that story, right? Where a company's going one direction, and by going the wrong direction, they identified the right direction to go. And they would have never saw the right direction unless they made the wrong direction. So take action. If you're committed to it and you're willing to pay the price, right, to grow and scale your business, just start acting.
But they also have to have the willingness to pivot quickly, when it comes up. And that's
totally.
And that's mostly mindset stuff. I think of one tangible thing as you were speaking. Along with that is, okay, you mentioned automotive services. So maybe scaling in that industry means that you also need to lease a bunch of bays, or find a property to acquire, or right. Like you have to have a place to work on these vehicles if you're servicing these things. And so do you have the financial resources to be able to do that? Are you going to have to get a loan? Are you going to, like, financially, are you in a position? Do you have, 6 months to a year of emergency fund to be able to pay bills if things go south? Right? Yeah. I mean, and so tangibly and from a financial standpoint, I think it's important to do those numbers also. because regardless of the economy, just fundamentally, you need to be in a position to be able to scale, right? Where too many entrepreneurs, it's kind of an all thing, and then
Mhm.
before they know it, they find themselves in bankruptcy and whatever else, just because fundamentally they didn't go into it, um, just executing the right fundamentals and staying out of the red on your books.
Totally. No, I love that. Here's a
Oh,
good example of it. We can wrap up after this, here, and I'll have you have some closing remarks. But I was thinking about even my truck, right? So, um, I would love to have an advocate around my truck. I know that sounds kind of weird. Like, I don't know how often those shocks need to be replaced. I would love to have someone that was like coach me and say, hey, you know what you should really do to your truck, or oh, you know what you should do here. And they're like an advocate. You know how great it would be to have someone that is very customer friendly, that gets me and says, hey, Kipp, I'm going to charge you an overhead of this much a month. And they're just telling me where to take my truck. Okay, hey, I got an appointment for you. Take your truck into this place. They work a discount. They get some costs over the top, and they're almost like the Amazon of the service of my truck. They're the middleman that addresses all the things I need to get done. So I don't have to go figure out all these different service places, where to get tires, even where I should do my oil change, where I should get my shocks tuned or whatever else. And they love my truck as much as I love it. And they want to make sure it's getting taken care of for me. There's like a family physician that associates me to all these other places, right? Like the possibilities of outsourcing certain areas in the service area that you don't want to do, but you're an advocate in a different way, and you sub out certain areas until you can scale, man, the ideas and possibilities start getting crazy. Like,
that's
but you have
so
to kind of think out of the
good.
box. Yeah.
Yeah, in my business, what I call that proactive follow up for my guys, and what it
Yeah.
is keeping your business at the forefront of people's minds, regardless of what they're thinking about, so that when they do need what you have, you're going to be the guy they think of. Yeah, that's money right
Totally.
there. Good stuff.
Totally. And you don't have to do all the stuff. You
Yeah.
could easily be like, oh, hey, your tires are, you should probably be up on tires. Oh, hey, yeah, go to Bob over here. This is what it'll cost you. Got you a good rate over there because you know all the connections or whatever. You know what I mean?
Mm,
I don't know.
yeah.
You can tell I need to get my shocks tuned. I have no idea where to go.
Yeah.
Because I think they're getting loose. Like, don't they need to be serviced on lifted trucks? I think they do.
Probably.
Yeah.
I don't
See,
know. My
I don't
turnover
know.
is too quick, I think, on things
Yeah.
for
See,
to
yeah,
know.
you just buy a new truck every time. I love it, man. Well, hey, Shawn, thanks, man, for stepping in and hopping on
Great
with
to be
me.
here.
Yeah,
By the way,
absolutely.
congrats
Always,
on your
always
hunt
fun.
and
Dude,
successful. That was like
yeah, I was gonna
unreal.
mention it because you did that same hunt in Molokai with Ryan in the
Oh
past,
yeah,
right? Yeah.
yeah.
So dude, yeah, first archery hunt. I literally got that bow a week before I went on that hunt. So
That's what
I
I was thinking. I'm
was
like, I don't even think Kipp like shoots at all. I was tripping out
no,
that you even
I
went. That's
I
amazing. You
know.
have no idea how amazing. Like, don't take
I
that for granted that you went out and you got yourself an access deer. That
no,
way, like,
trust
there's
me.
guys right now probably like punching themselves in the face, mad because like how
Yeah, I feel blessed. I really do. I haven't let it go into my head because like, I had to borrow camo. You know what I mean? Like and
yeah.
and really my thought was this is what made me feel good is I talked to Rick and I'm probably I don't know if Ryan knows this, but I was talking to Rick and he's like, how you feeling? I'm like, dude, I am stressed, right? Like I shouldn't even be going on this hunt, right? Because I never shot archery. I just got a bow a week ago. I'm practicing every day. I just want to be somewhat effective. And he's all, dude, how many times has Ryan been on this hunt? I'm like, I don't know. He's like six years he has. He's like, how many times has he gotten an access deer? And I was like, oh, got it. Right. So like I'm like, okay, so if I come and I don't get one, like, it's not like I'm a complete moron, right? Like, he's
No,
like, no,
great.
don't. Yeah. Low bar, right? You just come and do your best. Right. And so my thought was, man, if I go and I get a chance to fling an arrow, that would be a win. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I would be happy. And thus I was happy immediately, like on day one, and had plenty of opportunity. And it was a blast, man. I learned so much. Like every shot I missed, there was a lesson.
Oh
It wasn't
yeah.
like, oh, it was a bad shot. It was like, oh, I didn't confirm a clean lane. Oh, I didn't do this. Oh, I didn't do that. Right. And so then the next day I had that dialed in. Right. And so
Dude, that week
it
is
was
like
cool.
a year or two of hunting experience.
Yeah. That's how, what I assumed. Right.
Yeah.
Like it would have taken me 5 years to get the experience I got in that week. And it was, so it was,
And what a
man,
good crew too, man. Shout out to
dude,
Rick and M42 Adventures and all the stuff they do. Like,
yeah,
even anything with that guy, it's gonna be a great time and a
yeah.
great experience, and you're gonna learn a lot. And
Yeah,
yeah, it's
it
awesome.
was good stuff, man. So hopefully you're back on the Molokai trip, and maybe we pull it off, and I get to join you maybe next year or something. So
Yeah,
I
absolutely,
would
it'd
love
be
to.
fun.
Yeah, it was great. All right, man. Well, as a couple key call outs, the main thing, guys, is the Iron Council. So if you're on the fence, you got like a week. That's it. So join us. That's orderofman.com/Iron Council. Follow Mr. Mickler on the socials at Ryan Mickler, on X as well as Instagram. I don't know the exact times and whatnot, so you'll have to connect to him on the socials, but we are doing a preview call where we'll talk about what it means to be in the Iron Council and what does that look like. And so if you're looking for more information, go to the website and or follow Ryan for the details of that preview call. We'll do that live on YouTube. And then, maybe the only other call out is, as Shawn already alluded to it, m42adventures.com. That's that Molokai trip that I went on. I know they're planning an Africa trip later this summer. There was a couple spots open as of like a week ago. So get on that and learn more by going to m42adventures.com. Shawn, thanks again, man. I appreciate it. And
Thank you.
then, gentlemen, until Friday, take action and become the men that you were meant to be.